Next deputation, and that is Mr. Tom Klein from Klein and Backus, and this is regarding the gating of the 4th Concession Road, former township of South Walsingham. Welcome, Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, and good evening, members of council. I have a handout that is being distributed. I'm here seeking council's support for the repeal of a bylaw that was passed on the 10th day of October 2012. And the material that I have handed out is a copy of the bylaw. And essentially what the bylaw does is close down the unmaintained section of the 4th Concession Road in the former township of South Walsingham. Highways and roads have had a historical significance in the province of Ontario. That's why we can travel to Ottawa or Sudbury or Niagara Falls and travel up and down any particular road, subject, of course, to municipal management. Municipalities have been trustees of roads, bearing in mind that they are trustees for the public at large. When I say public at large, I'm talking about public in the global sense. Because of agitation throughout the years, municipalities wanted more control over their highways. And if you turn to page 2 of my handout, you'll see the first piece of legislation that was passed by the province to deal with some kind of restriction on roads. I would point out, however, that this particular legislation was restricted to the City of Toronto. And I've included in the material a commentary from a leading municipal author, and I've underlined what he states in alluding to Section 35, which is the section of the Municipal Act which attempts to restrict the common law right of access to highways. The author states, and I quote, "This right permits a municipality to establish one-way streets, bus, bicycle, and taxi lanes, and to prohibit pedestrians or cyclists from using highways or vehicles from using sidewalks." And the reference for that is the City of Toronto Act. So that was the parent legislation that was parroted out and adopted by other municipalities, premised, of course, on that initial legislation that was given to the City of Toronto. Now, as I've indicated, highways have had a considerable history in the province of Ontario. And I've included a recent case that was started in 2011. And I just want to draw yourself on page 1 of that case and just note the number of participants that are involved. I would say there's probably 15 or 20 participants. What happened was the town of Meaford brought forward an old bylaw they found in 1854 and wanted to establish a road. And if I take you to the next page and look at paragraph 10, in the court record it states, "The public road which Meaford asserts has been established through the defendant's properties along their easterly sides immediately adjacent to the water's edge. The disputed road thus lies between the defendant's cottage and the shores of Georgian Bay." So essentially what happened is Meaford found this old bylaw, there had been cottages built, and they established this road between the cottages and the shore, and of course that upset the cottage owners. And then they went ahead and they sought declaratory relief that the road is a public highway governed by the Municipal Act 2001. It is owned by and under the jurisdiction of Meaford. And of course they're relying on that Section 35 that I just alluded to. They also sought a permanent injunction to preclude the ratepayers from using access to that road. The matter became into court. If I take you to the next page, and here's what the judge had to say about that. "Upon the return of the motions, the courts drew counsel's attention to the decision in so-and-so with respect to adding the Attorney General as a party to proceedings involving disputes as to whether public roads had been established in municipal townships." And I would point out that the same principle applies when you're closing roads as it is when you're opening roads. There is a public input that has to be taken into consideration. Now, the lawyer for Meaford says at paragraph 26, He urged that Section 35 of the Municipal Acts, proclaimed in force, allows the municipality to deal with all rights of use and restrictions of the common law right of passage in respect of a purported roadway, and as such there is no need to name the Attorney General as a party defendant. He sets out the section. The judge says, Section 35 of the Municipal Act does not in any way abrogate from the overarching interests of the public as to its right of passage, nor does this section take away or reduce the jurisdiction of the Crown, the right of the province of Ontario, to exercise its jurisdiction over roads or in respect of land sought to be declared a road within the province. In my view, as there is a public interest in the outcome of this action and the pending motion which extends simply beyond the dispute between Meaford and the named defendants, the Crown and the right of the province of Ontario, as represented by the Attorney General, is a proper party. That went up to the Court of Appeal. If you turn the next page, and what's interesting, the only thing I want to demonstrate there is look at the number of defendants we have now. We have page 1, turn the page 2, all named defendants, including at the top, Attorney General of the Province of Ontario, and page 3. So clearly the court gave direction as to ratepayers and other interested parties who had to be notified of this particular proceeding. The Municipal Act comes out shortly after Section 35 was proclaimed. And if you turn to the next page, it mandates that a municipality must adopt policies. Number 4 is important from our perspective: the circumstances in which the municipality shall provide notice to the public, and if notice is to be provided, the form, manner, and times of notice shall be given. 5, the manner in which the municipality will try to ensure that it is accountable to the public for its actions, and the manner in which the municipality will try to ensure that its actions are transparent. In furtherance of that policy, Norfolk County did, in fact, put forward policies, and that's set out in the next page. They set out a policy dealing with the permanent road allowances, lanes and alleys, closure policies and procedures. That's an impressive title, passed on July the 12th, 2011. The purpose is to establish a policy with respect to the closure of road allowances, lanes and alleys within the county, as well as the procedures for processing such requests. You come over, talks about the policy statement authorizing the closure of road allowances. All costs are to be incurred by the person who is initiating the road closing. Notice of a road closure request will be provided to property owners whose lands abut the subject road allowance, lane, or alley. That's a pretty important paragraph. Down at the bottom of the page, a request to close and convey a road allowance, lane, or alley will not proceed if there is a municipal or legislated use of the road allowance, lane, or alley. B, an owner of land will be deprived of their sole vehicular access of their land as a result of the closure. The owner of the land will be landlocked as a result of the closure. Now, the bottom of the page, notice of public meeting for council to consider the closure of a road allowance, lane, or alley shall be given to the public in accordance with Norfolk County's public notice policy. Clearly an attempt on council to provide transparency for their actions. Now, if you go over to the next page, we have another bylaw passed by the county, and it talks specifically about the notice requirements. And I've included just the first page to demonstrate the bylaw. And if you go over to the next page, you'll see that highway closings, permanent, no statutory requirement for notice. Advertisement notice published in a local newspaper having a regular publication is sold to the public and subscribers at least 14 days prior to the passing of the bylaw. Now, I'm not aware of any public notice for this bylaw. There's nothing on the face of the bylaw that indicates that any public notice was given. Finally, including in that particular package that you have, is a matter that was dealt with last week by this council, September the 24th, 2013, wherein a road in Simcoe was closed. And I read to you, the purpose of this report is to close the road. As per the requirements of the Permanent Roads, Lanes, and Alleys Closure Policy and Procedure, a public notice was placed in the Times Reformer and Lakeshore Shopper the weeks of September 9th, 16, 2013.
You have one more minute.
As I've indicated, there was no such notice on the face of that. Now, There has a report that went forward to council when the bylaw was passed. In the report, it talks about the condition of the road. We know that the road was not perfect. There's a talk and discussion about the involvement of Mr. Kenline. My information is that the involvement of Mr. Kenline was not as stated in that particular report. There's indication that there was garbage dumping, bush parties, burnt vehicles, etc. I'm told that at one time, yes, there was a burnt vehicle, one vehicle. I'm told, yes, 20 years ago, there was a bush party. There's no reference into the report to the use of that particular property from the point of view of tourism, snowmobilers, bird watchers, naturalists, and it attracts a lot of botanists because of the degree of vegetation that's present.
Mr. Klein, how much more time would you need?
Finally, Mr. Chair, I have a petition signed by 147 persons, I'm told, and I'd
Mr. Klein, your time is up. I just wondered how much more time do you need?
That's fine. If it can be presented to the Madam Clerk. Pardon? Sure. Subject to any questions, that concludes my deputation.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any questions from committee members? Councillor Wells?
The purpose of the petition, what does it say, please?
They want the road open. They want the bylaw quashed, or repealed, bylaw open. Or, sorry, the road opened.
Reopened.
Reopened.
Anything further? Councillor Wells?
While you were preparing your presentation, did anyone call, write, phone in terms of, no, we want it left the way it is?
Not that I'm aware of. You might ask the audience who are here as interested ratepayers who want the road reopened. That may be of some assistance to committee to do that. Maybe if you raise your hand, those ratepayers here involved in this that want the road open.
That's okay. Yeah, and just please, if you could shut those devices off, please. Councillor Wells, you don't have to stand. And we have Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. When you were making your presentation, I wasn't quite sure what your deputation was going to conclude with, but now you've said are you representing all of those 147 people?
My notional clients for purpose, my clients for purpose of the record are Mr. Kenline, Mr. Squires. They're spokespersons for all of the neighboring residents in the area, as I understand it.
I see. And all of the folks that have signed the petition that want the road open, do you have any idea whether they use it regularly, and if so, for what purpose? Because that road is impassable a good portion of the year, of course.
I guess it depends on what your definition of impassable is.
If
We asked them to leave the chamber or turn it off.
could you shut the device off, please? Is it shut off? It is shut off. Thank you very much. Carry on.
As I said, I think it depends on what your definition of impassable is concerned. My information is that yes, certain times of the year it's not perfect, but with a little bit of maintenance, it could be made much better. They don't expect the Highway 407. I'm not aware of council having any complaints about the particular maintenance from ratepayers of that particular road. I know from my own personal knowledge, I've had occasion to take my grandson fishing down there, and yes, I have occasions where I've been kind of leery about whether I can get through, but I've always navigated it through. The last people I would consider calling if I got stuck would be the OPP or the County of Norfolk.
Thank you.
That's all right. Okay, thank you. Councillor Oliver, Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Klein, you mentioned the name Mr. Kenline. Is he one of the owners that's been shut out by,
Yes.
Is he one of the property owners there?
Mr. Kenline was approached by a staff person, as I understand it, when the road closing was contemplated. He was asked if he would consent to the road closing. I'm told that Mr. Kenline indicated to the staff person that he would like to talk to his neighbors before he gave a